So in the 80s, you started detailing in the 70s, but right in 70s.
Yeah, in the 70s. Yeah,
So,
I'm 61. I'll be 62 in February.
oh, that's it. Oh, you're still youngin. So if you
Prime.
can if you can tell us like so from the 70s to 80s to 90s to early 2000s to now, how did you progress in the detailing for like how did you start? Were you in business? When did you stop doing that to go work for somebody else? To like what you're doing, you went to Auto Geek, then went to 3D, doing all this. When did you kind of do like a timeline from like a quick one from 70s to now, if you can?
Okay, a great question, by the way. And by the way, I answered this question on a TV show, My Classic Car with Dennis Gage.
Oh, okay.
If you go to YouTube and type in Dennis Gage, Mike Phillips, and add the word interview, he asked me the
Hmm.
same question, and it's kind of fun to share your story on TV. He probably has
Yeah.
60 million people tuning in every single
Right.
week.
Mm.
But I started out. I always say I started out the same way most detailers did. That's growing up, being interested in cars and working on mom and dad's stuff.
Hmm.
And I started out working on dad's boat. I lived in Oregon for the first 42 years of my life. It rains a lot in
A
Oregon.
lot.
And
Yeah.
and so at the end of summer, September, you roll into October, rainy season, you put the boat away. And you got to think back as you're a little kid, and you're born like Rush Limbaugh would used to say, your head's full of mush. Okay. And then you go to first grade and you learn and you learn, but as you start to learn, one of the things I started to notice was when the month of May came around. So imagine a kid that's like 4 or 5 or 6, right? I mean, you're young. But when May comes around, Dad gets the boat out because Memorial Day weekend, you're going
Hmm.
camping. Okay, so and then a couple more years, maybe I'm 7 or 8, and I'm cognizant of this. Oh yeah, it's Memorial Day weekend.
Hmm.
We get the dirt bikes out, we get the boat out, we get the fishing poles, we get the camper. We're going in Oregon. We're going camping. We're going water skiing. We're going fishing and you're excited. It's summer starting. Summer starts Memorial Day weekend. Summer starts. We're going camping, riding dirt bikes. We had all that stuff growing up, and so my first inclination was I wanted to get that boat ready.
All
So,
right.
hey, it's been sitting for 9 months. It's got mold, mildew on the seats.
Hmm.
The plexiglass windshield. You can't see through it anymore. There's oxidation.
Yeah. Yep.
And I really just started out. I wanted to get that boat ready to go. I grew up loving to water ski. That's why I bought. A lot of people don't know this, but um, for the people that know that I'm missing my leg. Okay, I'm missing my right leg. I was ran over by my own boat. It's a full race Sanger drag boat, and the original reason I bought that boat was, well, there was two. One, at the age of 21, I'm thinking I want to be a boat racer for a living, which was ridiculous. But when you're 21, you do stupid stuff. And the other reason was to go water skiing. I just loved to water ski, and I wanted to have my own boat. And Dad always had a conventional family ski boat. I just took it up a couple notches to a national title holding, record holding drag boat that clocked
Yeah.
122 and 9 seconds on the water. In 1986, when I was 26 years old, I got flown out over the front of it and ran over the top of me, and the prop cut my leg off. So, but the way I got involved in this was my passion for boats and
Mm.
water skiing and fishing. And that would be the 70s. And then moving into the 80s, um, I made the mistake one day of walking into a PBE store. So, do you guys know the difference between a PBE store and a hard parts store?
Mm-mm.
There's two kinds of stores. Now, most people don't know this, and that's normal because you don't work in the behind the scenes part in the warehouse distribution. And when you work, I went to work for McGuire's, and one of the things I learned right away was, well, we delivered to PBE stores and to hard parts stores. So a hard parts store is AutoZone, Pep Boys,
Mm.
even not so much Napa, but Auto Boys, O'Reilly's, your
Yeah.
basic
Yeah.
automotive parts stores. They're on a main road with lights and a big neon sign, and people go in and buy a starter motor or a battery or a bottle of car wax. Well, that's hard parts. Then there's what's called a PBE store, paint, body, and equipment. So any town that's big enough to have a dealership in their town, like Ford, Chevy, Hyundai, they're going to have body shops at the dealerships and also your local custom car shops and collision shops. And these people need paint and solvent and sandpaper. And so a PBE store, because they're fed by the same warehouse that carries all the stuff that goes to the hard parts store, it's just a different twist on the automotive supply chain. And PBE stores, I walked into a PBE store one day and I saw the Meguiar's professional line. I had always went to a local auto parts store in Oregon called Connects. There was a couple of brothers, and I forget their first names, but their last name was Connects, and they had 7 stores. And they got Rain Dance and throw out some commercial names, Mothers, Meguiar's,
Right.
Turtle Wax, New Finish. I mean, they got your Black Magic. They got your basic consumer products. And all of a sudden I walked into a PBE store because this is when I painted my first car. And I'm going, wow, what are all these products here with the numbers on them? And the guy behind the counter goes, oh, that's the Meguiar's professional. They're for body shops. And so I started buying them and using them. And I got pretty adept at working with their line. And there came a point in life where I had the opportunity to become a trainer for Meguiar's, covering the states of Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And at the time, it was kind of funny because at the time, the guy that offered me the job, he wanted me to go out and be a sales rep. I was too stupid to understand that. I thought he wanted me to go out and show people how to polish paint. I thought, oh, I can do that.
I can do that, yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, did you know you were selling them at the same time? I had no clue. I was just young and dumb. And so he hooked me up with a big old box delivery truck, and I started calling on shops throughout Oregon on the coastline. And I just would knock on the door and just say, hey, I'm here with Meguiar's. Would you like to see any of the new stuff? And as soon as you say that, everybody's like, oh, yeah, we love Meguiar's. Come on in. And to tell you the truth, the thing that really got me going was because I had an artificial leg. I didn't look like a traditional salesman. You know? So I got welcomed in, and you guys are both going to find this very hard to believe, but a lot of the shops I called on for the first 2 years in the industry, they'd never seen a foam buffing pad. Never. Okay. Wow. Meguiar's introduced the foam buffing pad in 1965. Okay. The Mustang was introduced. The Beach Boys came out with Help Me Rhonda. The Rolling Stones came out with Can't Get No Satisfaction. I mean, we're talking a long time ago. Yeah. And I was shops in the 80s, and they'd never seen a foam pad. Well, imagine you're a body shop guy, and you see the difference between guys at a body shop. Let me get my hands up here. Guys at a body shop and guys at a detail shop and a dealership is the body shop guys actually want to do good work. And if everything you've buffed out is with a wool pad and you're leaving holograms, but you're thinking, well, that's all the guy can do. I got a wool pad. And some guy pops in and he's got a foam pad and shows you how to make the work you did look even better. Sales go up. Boom. And it was really an amazing time. I was single. I was making shop calls at a 1969 Chevy Blazer with the top off most of the time with my boxer crab bait, and I had an artificial leg. So when I call in a shop, I wasn't like a normal sales guy. And they would let me in, and I was showing just stuff they'd never seen, and just sales went through the roof. And there came a point, I should write this down in a book. There came a point where all the warehouses in Oregon, Washington, Idaho just got drained. And so they started putting orders into the factory in California. And somebody in California's like, what the hell's going on up north there? Their sales are up. There's some guy named Mike Phillips up there. He's calling on shops, showing guys how to polish paint with our stuff. And I did so many car shows, and I taught so many classes. I just want to show people how to do stuff. But back then, that was the only products that were really working good, and they had a system. See, you can name all the brands you want to, but Meguiar's had the foam pad for the first 20 or 30 years before anybody else. Buff and Shine, Lake Country, anybody had this stuff. It was a guy named Walter Cotton I met him. He invented the foam pad, and he sold the rights to it to Meguiar's in 1965. In my antique wax collection, I got a box with an original foam pad from 1965 in it. Okay, so this is
Wow.
the real deal. But anyway, so you asked me how the transition through my life. So I started out like everybody else, but I kind of started out working on boats because I wanted to get the boat going. I wanted to go water skiing. I wanted to go fishing. Later on, I wanted to race the boat. And then because I had a background in detailing cars, because I was interested in boats, I went into cars. That's a natural progression. And I started using all Meguiar stuff when I was detailing. After I lost my leg, I met this guy in Seaside, Oregon. His name was Jack Burkby, and he owned what's called an RDC, Regional Distribution Center for Meguiar. So there was 11. Because when they first started as a family business, they didn't go to the big warehouses. It wasn't a business model back then. But as time went by, that was the business model. So they bought out all the RDCs and put everything in a warehouse, and that's where we are at today. But then I left there in 1989, and I went to work for Hewlett Packard, but I kept detailing cars all the time. And let's see, I got to think back what happened then. Here's what happened. I went to work for Hewlett Packard, and someone introduced me to this thing called a computer and the internet. And all this information I had about how to sell cars, I started writing how-to articles on a BBS bulletin board. Okay, everybody nowadays knows Facebook and TikTok, and all this stuff. But back in the old days, it wasn't like that. There was other things. Well, I was on the other things, and I was just answering questions. I met all these people like, hey, I'm working on this over the weekend. I don't know what to do. And I would type out an answer, and I would type out an answer. Just typed and typed. I'm a speed typist. And at some point, I was also, even though I left Meguiar's, I had a 1966 Chevy milk truck. You guys can Google this. Go to Google Images, type in 1966 Chevy milk truck, and add my name, Mike Phillips, and you'll see my milk truck. And I used to call in shops, and I sold the Meguiar's detailer line, and that was my detailing van. So when I pulled up someone's house, there was a milk truck there with all my supplies in it. And but I was doing all these car shows, and someone said to me, "You got a pretty good handle on this whole car detailing thing. Why don't you write a book?" And I thought, well, I can't write a book. I don't have a degree in writing, and I don't have a license. I don't have permission from the government. I had all these reasons not to do it. And then after reading all these other books that were on the market and not learning anything, I thought, well, shit, if these guys can do it, I can do it. So I wrote my first how-to book called The Art of Polishing Paint. And I was at a car show as the Portland swap meet, a huge swap meet, and one of Barry Meguiar's very close friends came through and bought a copy and told Barry about it. And one day I just got my first cell phone. Nobody had the number. And I'm coming home. I'm working at a pulp mill. I'm driving what's called a scoop. You can type this in, scoop operator Mike, and then Mike Phillips, and it'll pull this scoop up. I used to drive big, heavy equipment stuff, And I'm driving home from a hard night of driving scoop, and all of a sudden in my milk truck, and my phone rings. It's like 7 a.m. I got off at 6. I'm like, who the hell is this? And this guy gets on the phone and goes, hey, is this Mike Phillips? I go, yeah, this is Barry Meguiar. I'm going, the Barry Meguiar? He goes, yeah, the car wax company, Barry Meguiar. And I said, can you just hold on a second? I got to park my milk truck. It's kind of loud. It's a big block Chevy. The doors rattle. And so I pulled over, and he says, I hear you wrote a book about our product line. And the first thing I thought was, he's going to sue me. And I thought, well, what the hell? I got nothing to lose. And he says, tell you what, why don't you just rip out the first 4 chapters and mail them to me? So I did. A week later, he says, how'd you like to fly down here for an interview as a writer for my company? I said, sure. Flew down, interviewed. A year later, he created the job, and I became the corporate writer for Meguiar's. And I took over all the writing duties for Barry, label copy, telephone or radio jingles, TV, anything that had to do with words became my responsibility. And so working on mom and dad's boat, then mom and dad's cars, then detailing cars, then going to work as a trainer for McGuire's, then becoming the corporate writer. And while I was at McGuire's, they had a 3-car garage in Irvine. And I went to Mike Pennington one day and I says, hey, what do you guys do with the garage out here? And he says, well, nothing. And I thought, well, can I hold a detailing class? He says, yeah, go for it. So I held one class. And see, by then the internet had kind of started to creep into everybody's life. So this thing called a discussion forum was invented. And I was hanging out on this thing called Mercedes Shop. And anybody that listens to this in the future, if they remember, they'll know this. And it still exists today. It was a discussion forum. And I was up there just kind of hanging out. And I seen all these guys that live locally in the Orange County, Los Angeles area. And they're all talking about car detailing. It's like they had half of it right, but half of it wasn't right. And I said, shit, you guys are nearby. Come on down Saturday and we'll have a class. So they all came down. I had 25 guys show up in Irvine, California. And I just went through the basics of how to wash a car, clay a car, machine compound, machine polish, machine wax, just the tires, just the basics. And then everybody had a good time, had pizza. And then the next week, my phone started ringing. Hey, we hear you got these classes going on. We're part of the BMW club. We'd like to come on down. We're part of the Miata club. We're part of the Corvette club. We're part of this club. And I just go, oh, okay. And I kept going to my boss and going, hey, can I do another class? Yeah, do another class. And it's like a snowball. It just grew. It became a monster. And finally, McGuire's actually came to me and said, hey, we really like you writing, being the writer, the writer guy. But we like what you're doing out there in the garage and on the internet, how you tie them together. Could you just write your own job description? So I did. And I added $20,000 to my salary.
That's right.
Of course.
This is good. So I wrote, this guy, he can work from home because he's just on the internet. He teaches the classes on weekends. And I had as a writer, I knew to make a bulleted list because the human eye likes a bulleted list. They don't like a chunk of text like everybody on the internet writes. So I wrote this bulleted list of things I do, and I gave it to my boss. And he went to this big meeting, and about 5 minutes later, comes back and says, "Oh, Mike, they love everything on here, but this one part, this $20,000 a year raise. So it's that's a sticking point." And without missing a beat, I just said, "Well, you know what? I'm happy doing the writing job. I'll just stay there." And he says, well, let me go talk to him again. 1 minute later, he comes in. It's good. Good. Just start doing what you're doing. Just do it. You got the 80,000. So, boom.
Wow.
A huge raise. And then so I started teaching the classes and mixing it on the internet. And the biggest thing was learning how to deal with photos and show pictures. So, nowadays, if you're a monkey, you can take a picture of their phone and put it on Instagram or Facebook. Back in the old days, you had to be smart. You had to know how to do HTML, a little bit of BB code. And I taught myself all this stuff, and I taught a lot of classes. I shared a lot of pictures, and a lot of guys are instructors, but they can't share pictures like I do. So that's one of my strengths for the marketing aspect. But one day I get a phone call from some person at AutoGeek and said, hey, we got this car show out here called Detail Fest. We'd like you to come out there and teach that class you teach out there in California on the East Coast. And so I went out there and taught it. And at the end of the class, Bob McKee, he came to me and said, hey, when you're all done here, come back to my office. So I went back to his office, and he basically just said, hey, what would it take me to steal you, or I think he said peel you away from McGuire's? And I wrote my salary down on a piece of paper, and I pushed it over to him. And I think he was sticker shocked for a second. He goes, really? And I go, yeah. And then without missing a beat, he says, I'll give you that in a TV show. Boom. That is done. And
Wow.
And here's why. It wasn't the TV show. That was not, and I had always dreamed about having a car detailing TV show. What I wanted to do, though, was this. Instead of teaching a class for 25 people, let's teach a class for 25 million people. It showed them what it took me years to figure out, because there's so much junk information out there. And so we had our first TV show, and then later on we had a second TV show. I think the intentions behind the directors and the producers for both were really good, but I think they missed the mark. What they should have done was KISS, keep it simple, Simon. Instead of having me working on the round door rolls in the Peterson Museum, there's only one in the world, they should have had me, these cars that are just out of the league of the average person.
Yeah.
we worked on Ozzie Duesenberg's personal Duesenberg in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. Okay, yeah, it's beautiful, but we worked on Adam Carolla's 1965 Maserati in his man cave. Okay, these are all great things, but the average car guy's got a 69 Chevelle or a 57 Chevy,
Or Ford
or
Pinto or something.
something, just,
Yeah.
car guy, something. And we never got to that point. And, but that's kind of and then after serving 11 years or working 11 years at the Geek, after Bob McKee sold it, in my opinion, the work environment just changed and I didn't want to be a part of it. So um, one of the things that I really liked about the Geek was I had the ability to use so many different products. And here's what I tell people, and I know people are cynical, but this is a true story. I always detail cars. I've always detailed cars. And McGuire's didn't know why, and AutoGeek didn't know why, and even 3D, why do you do this? Don't we pay you enough? And I go, no, you pay me enough, but I like working on cars. And people come to me with something cool that doesn't look good, and they want me to fix it. They don't want some guy they don't know. They want me to fix it. So that's the last 5 cars fit that description. They want me to fix the car. And there's a lot of detailers on the earth that are like that. People know and trust them, and they want them to fix their Pinto or their Porsche, whatever they got. And but I guess the thing is I forgot where I was going with that. It's somewhere I got caught in a loop. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
I understand.
But anyway, I've always detailed cars. And, when I left AutoGeek, the thing, I know people get cynical. Here's where I was going with that. But the last 2 or 3 years I was at the Geek, whenever I was detailing cars, I was always, getting 3D products. I go, gosh, this car's coming in. I'm going to do a one step. I'm grabbing 3D speed. Oh, this car's coming in. I got to get the sanding marks out. I'm grabbing the 510 compound. I wasn't thinking, oh, I love this brand. I was just thinking, I want to get something that works easy. It's a hard job. I want it to be as easy. I want to get my results as fast as I can, keep my quality high. And I was always just grabbing 3D products. I could have picked any brand in the market. And for tools, I was always grabbing Flex. I want to get, my motto is this: I want to get in and get out. My wife is sitting right out there on the couch waiting for me. She's beautiful. She's beautiful. She's waiting for me to come sit with her and, relax a little bit before I got to fly out to SEMA tomorrow. And why would I want to stay down at the garage and spend an extra 2 hours detailing a car when I can be at home? So my motto's always been how to get in and get out. I want to do as fast as I can to keep my quality high. And that's what I teach my classes. I teach people how to get in and get out.
There you go.
That's great. So,
Mike, you opened up a Pandora's box.
I sure did.
Great story, though, Mike.